Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to Full Course Yellow. It's the Thursday night get-together from the team at In Pit Lane. It's good to have you once again joining us on a night when, we said originally too much motorsport is barely enough. Well, tonight we've got even more because the big announcement today, great news for Melbourne, is that the Australian Formula One Grand Prix, we're expecting that there would be an extension on the contract. Not sure that anybody was really expecting the extension to be for a full 10 years. Coming out there. So along with what was left over on this contract, we've got 13 more years of Grand Prix racing at Albert Park. So we'll be talking about that. And also the good news, the bonus news on top of that, is the fact that Formula 2 and Formula 3 will be here for the first time as well. So that's really exciting news for a whole bunch of reasons we'll go into tonight when we talk to our various panel members, and we just we'll open them up and have a look at who we've got on board. We've got Pete Johnson, we've got Chris Ritchie, we've got David Stillwell, and of course Craig Doc Gladigo. G'day guys, how are you all?
Evening, gents.
Evening.
Well, this is very good news that we got this afternoon. I mean. Bit of a surprise, and a really good surprise, the fact that we're getting Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well. This makes it, it was already a good support category with the local categories, but now this is something new, this is something exciting, and I think it comes at a really good time for Australian drivers as well, when you consider the young Australians over in Europe, looking to get into Formula 1 and who are moving through things like Formula 3 and Formula 2 and who might be in the years to come. Let's start off, Pete, what do you think? I mean, you would be absolutely delighted with this.
Yep, I am. And I think it makes sense to have, it's been nice to have S5000s and things like our open wheeler category there. It makes sense to have Formula 2 and Formula 3 there because they are the feeder category for Formula 1. And also, it's a nice synergy to keep the supercars there because a lot of the crew come from Formula 1 teams.
Yeah, I think the exciting thing about it is, and it really makes sense, this 10 years extension is a bit of smart thinking by the Grand Prix Corporation and by the Victorian government, because when you think about it, we're probably guaranteed, we know that there are bigger crowds turn up when there's a local involved, and we're pretty much certain at the moment that whatever happens with the future of Dan Ricciardo, certainly from next year, we're probably almost guaranteed to have a young Australian, and not just a young Australian, but a young Melbourne driver involved for the next 10 years, and that's got to bring lots and lots of people through the gates. If the rumours are true, and I think they probably are, we'll see Oscar Piastri running out next year at Albert Park behind the wheel of a Williams. Dave, what do you think?
Well, kudos, of course, to the Victorian government, Andrew Westacott, and the whole team at the Australian Grand Prix Corporation. I think this is definitely an indication that Liberty Media and the FIA really value the event in Australia. There's always talk about how far it is away from the rest of the world, but once you put aside the vast distance that it takes to travel to Australia. And anyone who's in Australia, the vast distance you have to travel to get anywhere other than Australia, New Zealand, or Bali. I think this is it shows that there is faith in the event, there is faith in the country, there is faith in the future and the popularity of the sport in this market. Once you factor in all of the drawbacks of the travel and the international TV window time, I think this bodes really well for the security of the event. Certainly gives a lot more stability for the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, particularly after the massive investment that's gone into the facility in the last 2 years with the restructuring, a lot of the upgrades by the Melbourne City Council and I think it's Hobson's Bay Council as well, has put into Albert Park and Parks Victoria. So there's all of this investment been made in the facility. It gives them the confidence that now they can go, rather than working year to year to year, if we're going to have Formula 2 and Formula 3 on the cards, and we know for anyone who's ever visited an overseas Grand Prix, just how much of the timetable those categories take up, it's probably going to mean you're only going to have one, possibly two local categories. The hot money, of course, would be on supercars from a commercial perspective, and someone like the Porsche Carrera Cup. Purely from a marketing perspective, marketing and exposure perspective. Essentially, the local version of the Porsche Carrera Super Cup. The only problem we have, of course, is that there's only, I think, 31 or 32 cars available. So there's really no room. There's really no room for guest drivers to come from overseas and dabble in an Australian Carrera Cup round.
I mean, Pete was saying before about, it's a shame. I know that, in the back of their mind, it was a big part of S5000's, future plans. I mean, to have that, round at the Grand Prix, probably to finish a summer season, and that would attract a lot more interest, particularly from international drivers who might want to run at the Grand Prix. You can't see them having any chance at all of getting on. I mean, I might be wrong, but you wouldn't expect, when you've got 3 open wheeler categories and they'll all be faster than S5000, you really can't see that they would, use that valuable time. We know that supercars will, definitely be on board. It would make sense for Carrera Cup to be on board, unless they can squeeze in another category somewhere. And it's going to be a really, really tight schedule now.
I think there's 2 big points missing here as well too, and that's one. It shuts the gate on the other cities that were thinking about bidding on it or did have made significant interest, maybe north of Victoria. So
suck it, Sydney.
Yeah, so that's one big thing. You're going to get you're going to get 2 pies and 1 with sauce from Stilly there, even while he's eating his ice cream. The other, that's the funny side of things, but also extremely important because they were half seriously thinking about throwing some money at it. But anyway, going back to Formula 2 and Formula 3, obviously they're having the 2 feeder categories. Not only are you going to have Australian drivers that are competing in overseas now, or the up-and-coming drivers, but look how inspirational it will be for the younger generation that come to Victoria to the track, or venture in or come from the outskirts. They will be absolutely beside themselves. Dad, I want to race in one of those cars one day. Oh, I want to buy a go-kart. Oh, I just want to start out. I want to race something. Or they might be, just totally inspirational stuff.
It's funny you mentioned sort of the inspiration. It was something that was raised today at the announcement by Andrew Westacott. He specifically mentioned karts. In fact, let's have a look at what went on today, the official announcement, some of the people involved, and see what they had to say.
And Formula One management have agreed to a 10-year extension of the Australian Grand Prix here at Albert Park.
I'd like to say thank you to the Victorian Government for supporting the extension of this event out till 2035.
This is the home of motorsport, so we're now going to have an open wheel extravaganza with F1, F2 and F3.
Formula 3 and Formula 2 add an extra layer of excitement with young girls and boys sort of forging their way through to Formula 1.
We see this as the breeding ground, along with karting in Australia, for the next generation of Aussie racers. We're going to do all we can to continue to make sure that this event is the best Formula One event in the world, building on the success of 2022.
We know for that week of the Grand Prix, the eyeballs of the world are on Albert Park, and they will be again for another decade.
Yeah, that was that's good news, and it was interesting, as was being said there, that the appeal of getting young karters involved, because we talked about Oscar Piastri racing into the future in Formula One, but for young drivers overseas like our mate Hugh Barter and Christian Mansell and young drivers like that, Jack Doohan, all of those young guys who are perhaps looking, especially if they're looking for local sponsors, particularly personal sponsors, that gives them the opportunity, gives someone like Hugh, for instance, the opportunity to say, hey, look, I'm going to be driving in FIA Formula 3, and yes, we do have a round at Albert Park, so you can, not only will you have your name, but there's going to be all those corporate entertainment possibilities and all those networking possibilities that are going to come about for Australian businesses supporting young Australian talent like Hugh and Christian and Jack and all of those sort of those young drivers coming through. So yes, it's really exciting news. And to be honest with you, I mean, if they'd have, it was one of the things that I always thought about, like the problem with actually paying money to go into the Australian Grand Prix is, yes, you see Formula One, but outside of that, it was just another local race meeting. It was just another supercar round. Now, Formula One, Formula Two, and Formula Three. Hell, I don't care how much it's going. I'm going.
And then one more little thing I just want to add to it that wasn't in the package then, but they've guaranteed, because it's been a bit of conjecture the last few years, especially with what's going on in the world, that 5, so there might be some twilights, 5 of the 10 will be guaranteed the first race of the Formula One season.
That was the big surprise. I mean, because we know that there's obviously been a deal. Now, it's I believe there's a bit of confusion. I think Speed Cafe said next year and the year after. Autosport have just come out and said not next year. It'll be 24 and 25, and then another 3 after that at various times in the 10 years. So we're not going to have it every year.
They've got to stick to the contract that they've got existing for the next 3. It's 10 more on top of that. And so I think obviously these 3 are obviously still under negotiation, or there obviously is something.
Well, they've said that this includes the 3 to go. So like that 5.
13, okay.
Yeah. So it depends on whether Speed. As I said, Speed Cafe is saying that it will be for the next 2 years. Autosport have only just come out about 20 minutes ago and said no, it'll be 24 and 25. But the thing is, apart from when we don't get the opening round, they have said that it will be no later than the 3rd round. So that's good. So it'll still be in that sort of general time slot. Because I was worried about the fact they were talking about pairing it up with Singapore or something like that, and having it in sort of having it in July or September or something like. No, that's not going to work. Yeah, that's not going to work.
If you'd observed some of Andrew Westcott's comments earlier in the year, where he was talking about some of the scheduling issues that the FIA and Liberty Media ran into, particularly when they obviously at the moment we haven't had a Grand Prix in China since 2019, or in Japan as well. So trying to fit in the season starting in the Middle East. One of the things you have to consider in countries where Islam is the predominant religion is the timing of Ramadan, which happens in that kind of March to April period, depending upon where the calendars line up. So that's one of the reasons why Australia was the 3rd event in the 2022 calendar. But again, particularly the earlier you can push it into March, again, put it in daylight savings time, certainly makes it much more of a festival atmosphere, and means we can start later in the morning as volunteer officials.
Yes, I think a later time slot for a lot of people would be good. Pete, what were you going to say?
Just getting back to the theory about being able to have sponsorship on the local sponsors on the cars and corporate hospitality. I noticed at this year's Grand Prix, the McLarens had OTR signage on them.
Yeah, so that's another deal for the locals as well. I mean, if they have for Formula One teams that might be struggling a little bit, they can pick up a bit of sponsorship too. But I just think it'll be really good for having those high profile feeder categories come in and have a couple of Australians in there, because we would assume that Jack Doohan will be still in Formula 2 next year. I don't think he's done enough at this stage to warrant a move up to Formula 1. And I mean, where the hell are we? We're having enough trouble fitting Oscar in, and he's incredibly well credentialed. But so you would imagine that he will be in Formula 2. If he can raise the funds, you would imagine Christian Mansell might get into either Formula 3 or Formula 2, because he's doing very well at the moment in the Euro Formula Open series, currently running 2nd in that series. And then our mate Hugh has been doing very well, currently leads the French Formula 4 Championship, and I think is 2nd or 3rd in Spain as well. So that's a really good opportunity for some of these young guys to get in and have a and approach local sponsors and get a bit of assistance, raise the profile.
Well, the other spanner I'll throw in the works, it doesn't say anything about Formula 2 and Formula 3 being locked into appearing every year or any number of years in that contract period. As we know, the Formula 2 and Formula 3 calendars tend to shuffle around a lot year to year to try to give the categories opportunities to race in markets, particularly amongst the predominantly European and Middle Eastern Grand Prix that they don't always get a chance to go to. We saw at the recent Miami Grand Prix, the W Series made its way across the Atlantic to race around the Hard Rock Stadium. What's really exciting for me is that, you might get Formula 2 and Formula 3, say, next year, and then in 2024, you might only get one of them, or you might get none of them. But if Formula 1 and Liberty Media and the FIA are working together to bring, regional and international level feeder series to the Australian, the Formula 1 Australian Grand Prix, what's there to possibly stop, I don't know, given those of us who caught up with the Toyota Racing Series car, or Toyota Gazoo Racing Series cars in New Zealand being used as substitutes for the W Series cars due to logistical delays. The Grand Prix takes place in March. The Toyota Racing Series ends at the start of February. What's the possibility that, I don't know, the Toyota Racing Series cars could get liveried up as W Series cars and host the opening round of the W Series at the Australian Grand Prix? Wouldn't that be something to celebrate women in motorsport?
How much Le Mans did you watch on the weekend, Stilly?
Sorry, say again?
How much Le Mans did you watch on the weekend?
About 12 to 14 hours, I'd say, across the 2 days.
Listening to Radio Le Mans, were you?
A little bit.
I can tell it's in your accent because you said gazoo like they've been saying Le Mans. It's pronounced gazoo. Bloody hell.
Kazoo like a kazoo.
No, you pronounce it like the Japanese pronounce it because they obviously, the Toyota people that pronounce it. Not like how the bloody Radio Le Mans guys, every time I heard it go, guys, you sound like an absolute bloody twats. Pronounce, it's gazoo, not gazoo. Oh, you just said it. You said it then in your thing, and I had to hold back then. I didn't cut you off.
Yeah.
Well,
but yes, that's a good segue, isn't it, Brett?
Whatever it's called, it was it was really good. And we will talk. Exactly, yeah, that's it. You say gazoo, I say gazoo, or gazoo, whatever. It's at least
pronounce the way the Toyota guys pronounce it. That's
at least they don't. At least they pronounce Bathurst properly, unlike Jeremy Clarkson.
Come on,
with 3 F's in
they
it?
make the word
Bathurst.
up. It's
Bathurst. Yes, this was really exciting when it won at Bathurst. And so somebody also on just recently, I think on Sky F1, was talking about, because Sebastian Vettel, I think we said last week, Sebastian Vettel said he'd rather run at Bathurst than Las Vegas. And somebody on the Sky News, one of the reporters there said, Sebastian Vettel said he'd like to see Formula One run at Bathurst. So the Bathurst Grand Prix, but it's not going to run at Bathurst. It's not going to run at Eastern Creek. It's not going to run around the rocks or around Dominic Perrottet's backyard or anything like that. It's going to run here in Melbourne at the Australian Formula One Grand Prix at Albert Park for the next 13 years, and that's really good news. And the good news is it's really already upset the Save Albert Park mob, who I just found out from Pete when we came on, are still around. They're still breathing, they're still kicking, and they're still fighting. Jolly good job there, chaps.
Is this the same protest organisation that's had millions of dollars spent on a dilapidated urban park in the last 25 years? Is it that group?
Yes, well, they're not particularly happy about that.
The positive side of it is they get another 13 years more to grow their membership.
Yes, well, they'll have to, because, I mean, last time I spoke to them, as we were saying before the show, the last time I spoke to them, they sort of, they were all sort of, it was God's waiting room, and they were all sitting there saying, we're very, very convinced that this will definitely be the last one. It can't last any longer than 1999. It'll be gone by 2007. It'll be gone completely. And we will try. You just know that in another 13 years' time, if for whatever reason they eventually say, okay, we've had a good run, that's it, Formula One is finished at Albert Park, that they will, the last... Yeah, the last year, we're having a party, we have triumphed, everyone.
At least they'll be able to turn their attention away from Albert Park for a couple of years, because they'll focus probably on the the noise, the loudness of the Olympics, or sorry, the games, they'll be able to protest against in the meantime anyway, because we can't have all this noise and all these cars and everyone and athletes running around the
We
countryside.
can't have fun. Hey, speaking of fun, let's have we haven't had the roll call yet, so let's check out who's joining us tonight. Once again, Box is joining us evening again. Our sponsor, Roy Virtual R from Online Invent, program sponsor of In Pit Lane. G'day, Roy. How are you? Thanks for that. I'll be in touch fairly soon. Something coming up we'd like to invite you to. So I hope you like a drink, because somebody's got to do it for me nowadays. Jeff McWigan, yes, Christmas has come early. Hopefully no there will be supercars. You can guarantee that. I think even with Formula 2 and Formula 3, it would be a very brave move to try and run the Grand Prix without supercars. They still do bring in a huge percentage of that crowd, and you can tell the moment the supercars finish for the day, particularly on Friday. Doesn't matter what's coming up left; people just disappear.
Well, just on that note, usually if you're looking at the crowd, there will be at least probably 1 in 200 of people, 2 in 200. One will be wearing a Ford top, and one will be a Holden bloody 888 top. So they do go to it, like Brett said.
So, but yeah, that'll be good. We've got Mad Cow Mark today. G'day, Marcus. Some good people. I don't know which ones of us aren't good. Perhaps we better not find out about that. But to all the so we'll say hello to Mark as well. Dave Howard is joining us again. Yes, AGP till 2035. The worrying thing about when you read that it's going to be extended to 2035, when you get to my age, is you look and say, what chance is there that I will actually be at the Grand Prix of 2035?
Be optimistic, Brett.
Yeah, look, if I can get to next year's, I'll be happy. Okay, we've got
that's a bet with long odds. I'm not taking, Brett.
Yeah. You, me, and my doctor as well. Every time I walk in, he goes, "But bloody hell!"
But he's usually optimistic in his voice. Anyway,
I think he's got a bet going with somebody. Tony Parr joining us as well. Mike Halsell is joining us as well. Le Mans, oh, what a feeling! Yes, so we'll get onto that.
Boom, boom.
Get onto that in just a moment. There, Bill wanting to know what is Formula 2. Well, you'll have to check it out, because the racing has been very good in the main in Formula 2.
Dr. Google, it's a little bit smaller and a bit more controlled.
Do you want to put the "Let me Google that for you" link in the subtitles?
Yes, so we've got Andrews joining us, running a bit late after seeing the good news, or sending the good news to all his Sydney colleagues. Yes, I noticed Dominic Perrottet has come out now and said, "Oh, we didn't want it anyway. I don't know why they made a very bad decision here. We don't want it. We don't need it."
It was all spam email anyway.
Pete,
he also said in 13 years, it'll come to its rightful place in Sydney.
Get off the grass. Actually, speaking of that, it's going to be legal in Canberra now, so he probably can do it if he wants to go down the road for a chuff.
Well, there you go, get on the grass. Hey, Brett Sellers. Oh, yes, okay. Brett coming home from the Fink Desert race, just in the Birdsville Caravan Park. There you go, crossing the Simpson Desert. So we've had people from Bali, but now from the back of Burke. I didn't get to Birdsville. We were going down for the Birdsville races, and it rained, and we got bogged just outside of. I think it was halfway down the Birdsville track. We got bogged, and we were there until well after the races were over. So that was one of my dad's big regrets, because he always wanted to go to the Birdsville races, never actually made it.
Yeah, the Birdsville track isn't a good place to be when it rains.
No, you spent quite a lot of time in that sort of area, like around Woomera and places in the outback, sort of, haven't you, Chris?
Oh yeah. They used to close the range at the first hint of rain.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about that. It's like the mud out at Calder Park as well. When you get that red soil, when it gets wet, it's just it's not like it comes like when it dries, it turns into concrete. When it's wet, it just clumps under, and there's no living with it. It's awful. But anyway, let's talk about Mad Cow Mark saying most will be dead in 13 years. I'm not sure whether you're meaning us or anybody, but some of us. Let's keep our fingers crossed for some of the younger ones. Okay, so let's talk about Le Mans. We got onto that. Not the most exciting Le Mans that we've ever had. Certainly not at the front of the field. But I mean, it's always an interesting race. It's always fascinating. Once again, as I said last week, the Friday of the event is probably my favourite day, just in terms of what's new and what's being announced. And we certainly heard that for the future that this was the last year of GTE Pro. Unfortunately, next year there will be GTE AM, and the following year they've announced that we knew that GT3 was taking over, but what they've announced now is. We don't really know what it's going to be, but it's going to be GT3 Premium. And we're not exactly sure what Premium is, but we just know that the ACO are saying that the cars will be required to run a GT3 Premium body kit, which will just make them distinctly a part of Le Mans and a part of the World Endurance Championship. Has anybody heard anything at all about what these cars are going to... I mean, they can't make them any wilder looking than they are now, surely.
If you have a look at the aerodynamics of a GTE car versus a GT3 car, the GT3 cars often have a lot more very small details, little flicks and upturns and vents, because they're primarily designed for sprint racing, and they're designed around cornering speed and not about terminal speed. Most GT3 cars, because they often fix both the gearbox ratios and the final drive ratio, most GT3 cars are on the rev limiter at 275, 280 kilometers an hour. That's both at the Nürburgring on the Dirtinger Höhe Straight. It's also the top speed you'll normally see on the cars downhill at Conrod Straight at Bathurst. Whereas a GTE car tends to have far more efficient aerodynamics. So they make similar sorts of downforce, but without the drag, making that cost a lot more money in terms of the way that you design the bodywork. If nothing else, I think they want to make, rather than having GT3 cars or GT3 manufacturers build a base model car that is only good at Le Mans and is useless anywhere else, and then basically building the best mousetrap and basically braining everyone. The ACO doesn't want that. So what they want is to effectively use the GT3 as the base car and then put effectively a Le Mans aero package on the car. So this will be something like a more efficient diffuser, most likely a different rear wing package, probably a different front bumper package and a front under tray. All parts which there are several cars in the GTE field that you can actually take one car and transition it to the other. So the Ferrari 488 GT3 and GTE car were both built by Michelotto, and the same base car could be transferred between the two with a change of electronics, engine, and bodywork. The same is true of the Aston Martin Vantage. The second generation Vantage is essentially the same car in both GTE and GT3 specification, again with changeovers of the bodywork and the engine and electronics, because they use different performance balances. So this level of change to a GT3 car to go race at Le Mans or in an ACO sanctioned series is not unheard of. If the point of the exercise of going to GT3 was to open up the race to as many marks as possible, that's the way to do it. But it has already raised some concerns. I think it was the boss of Porsche Customer Motorsport did query, what's the point of it? Is it just more of an expense? My observation of that would be, it has always been far more expensive to operate a GTE car than a GT3 car. and teams running those cars, make substantial investments in specific spares to that particular race. I don't think this is going to be a huge stumbling block. What it may do is that some of the older GT3 cars or some of the manufacturers that have no interest in Le Mans may not be willing to make the investment in developing the Le Mans or the GT3 premium kit, and therefore those people who are enthusiasts of that brand or already own that machinery may not have the option to run those cars at Le Mans. I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
Sorry, go back on it. Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing is that they're trying to weed out some of the manufacturers because they want the manufacturer involvement. They want heavy manufacturer involvement, and they probably don't want the fair weather friends coming in, and they just happen to have some the odd GT3 car around. They want a commitment from the manufacturers, even though they're not allowing pro teams anymore, which I know is a particular problem for Corvette, because Corvette have said that they will have a GT3 car, but they're very, very keen, in all the interviews that I've seen with them at everybody at Corvette Racing, is that they were very, very keen, that they really wanted to come in with an all-pro lineup again, because as someone said from Corvette Racing, these are people representing our brand, and we want the very best. We don't want, it's all right to say, well, we want gentleman racers. We don't want gentleman racers. We want professionals. We want the very best there is driving our cars at the best race in the world. So that's going to be a problem.
I would wager that people at Pratt Miller and GM Racing would have no shortage of applicants for the bronze driver positions in any GTE, Pro-Am GT3 or GT, whatever they end up calling it, GT Plus race. And given how much some of the people have gamed the system finding the sneaky silvers for the LMP2 category, I think there will be no shortage of people that might have been drivers back in the day that might be over 50 or over 55, you drop down to a bronze?
I think it's over 55.
Yeah. Trying to go find out, when does Jan Magnussen turn 55? When does Ollie Gavin turn 55? They will have plum seats for that. That someone will pick up the phone and call Emanuele Pirro again. Hey, Emanuele, would you like to come race at Le Mans? Someone will call Mika Salo. The phones will be ringing hot for people who just no, they're a bronze driver.
Yeah, let's hope so. I would like to think that we're going to see Corvette Racing back again, because they were a very important part of Le Mans over the years. They were certainly far and away the most popular team in the years that we were at Le Mans. They were always the most popular team. I mean, with everybody loved them. They were fabulous to deal with. They were just a wonderful team in terms of their PR and the way they made you feel when they invited you into the garage and all the rest of it. They're just terrific people, and
you'd never forget when it was lunchtime, would you?
No, that's well, that's the thing about Le Mans in general. One of the good things about, I know they mentioned on the Radio Le Mans coverage, and incidentally to John and the responsible lad, old Eve Hewitt, and all of the team at Radio Le Mans, once again a fabulous job, absolutely magnificent stuff, and in particular Paul Trustwell. My God. That man is he's forgotten more about Le Mans and about long distance racing than most people have ever known. He's had some major health issues over the past few years, and yet he was there pretty much from the time they rolled around at 4 o'clock and took the tricolour through to the time they dropped the checkered flag and beyond. Paul Trustwell was there and making huge contributions. So well done to everybody at Radio Le Mans. It has very much become a part of the very much become a part of the fabric of Le Mans. Incidentally, if you haven't seen it yet on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel, I think I mentioned last week, we have put up the first time that I got to go to Le Mans back in, I think, 2004, I think it was. Found the old DVD and have some footage of that, and that includes an interview with the old Radio Le Mans with Gary Champion. This was before. I think John was a part of it back in those days, but this was before he and Eve ended up taking over and buying Haymarket out and running Radio Le Mans. So we had then it was interesting and emotional for me as well, because the person I didn't do the interview, Melissa did the interview. So hearing her voice again was pretty much magic as well. So an emotional weekend, a great weekend at Le Mans. Toyota, Glickenhaus, what a great job. That at one stage, I mean, they were looking at really competitive, and if just waiting for the Toyotas to fall over. But this year, the Toyotas didn't fall over.
And they also, Alpine were hot on the pace, but they just did not have a reliable car. First 6 hours, they shot themselves in the foot, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they were always going to be, judging by the form in qualifying, they were always going to be struggling a little bit, but it sounds like the engine went early, and apparently at one stage they were running on 6 cylinders, which certainly wouldn't help matters any, so they were struggling. Incidentally, congratulations to our mate James Allen. I don't think this got anywhere near enough coverage over the weekend. Started from the very rear of the grid after one of his co-drivers, their bronze driver, crashed in practice, in free practice on Thursday. They spent all of Thursday, Friday, and into the early hours of Saturday putting the car back together again. It started from the rear of the grid and came up, finished 15th overall in LMP2, but more importantly, they won the LMP2 Pro-Am category. So from rear of the grid, and as James said, that it was he can now say that yes, I have been on the podium and I have won at Le Mans. So congratulations to James Allen.
One thing I did learn from Le Mans, because I was listening, I was watching the guys from Radio Le Mans, and I was looking at the studio version as well too while I was listening to it. But one thing, when they were talking about Car 7, when they were doing a reset on it, did you hear how technical it is to actually reset it? I can't remember the driver that was in at the time. Did you know that you can't reset the car if it's rolling? There must be some sort of sensor on it or whatever it may be. So the driver, whoever was doing the full reset after he stopped it, shut it all down and did the full installation reset again. And he had to do it 3 times, because on 2 occasions, if that wheel's turning just that, even those few mil forward or back, and it's actually rolling, it will not reset for him. So that's how technologically advanced the car is. If it's moving, he had to reset it again. So I'm not sure what's going on over at Toyota, but they've got the car has to be. You'd have to keep your foot on the brake and keep it absolutely stationary to the minuscule to reset it. Otherwise, it won't do it. So
the other thing that they've got with that car and with the hybrids in general is if something goes wrong, there's often a case. There was one time where they came into the pits and everybody ran towards it, and suddenly it was like waved. No, don't touch it! Don't touch it! It's not discharged. Because there was a light on somewhere which said, you might grab hold of something there and you'll be the earth. So do not touch anything.
It's actually an FIA standard signalling device that's the same across Formula One cars as well. So it's what they call the ERS light, or the ERS light. So it's positioned basically above the driver's head on the single seater, basically on top of where the air intake is and where the camera is positioned. It's in a similar position on the Toyotas, so it's positioned at the very top of the roof of the monocoque. Basically, it has 3 modes: green, orange, and red. Green is when the car's stopped. It means that the high voltage system is disconnected, which indicates that the car is generally safe, so you can touch it, you can move on it. Yellow is normally on while the car is driving. It indicates that the system is functioning normally, but it is connected, so the car could move under electrical power. Red indicates some sort of system fault. So anyone who's ever worked at trackside at an Australian Grand Prix during the hybrid era since the first year in 2014. Whether you're working trackside in a medical capacity, recovery, or a flag marshal, you get all of this training as part of the training day for the event. So the FIA is, if you remember the early stages of KERS and ERS, they had mechanics getting shocked by the system. So the FIA standardized a lot of these systems for both for Formula One and for Le Mans prototypes. But I can just imagine, shutting it down, firing it back up again, shutting it down, firing it back up again. When the car is, for all intents and purposes, perfectly fine, it's just some part of the brain isn't talking to the other part of the brain, or one of the modules in the network is, slightly out of sync with each other. You can imagine what it was like. It is from issues like this which has led to results like the Alpine hypercar winning a race outright purely from mechanical faults or electronic faults from the Toyotas. You're on mute again, Brett.
Yeah, this is.
Hang on. We've been trying to shut you up for decades, and twice in one night, the first person to shut you up is yourself. Twice.
Hey, just remember,
Carlton was within 4 points at one stage, and they're just gone back out. So I'm distracted. Sorry, guys.
Okay, so Doc is distracted. Yeah, just remember, everyone, I have the power over all of you. So, yes, I've got the Stream Deck down here, and the Stream Deck is one of the things one of the complaints is sometimes the buttons don't work. So we've got there's Paul saying motorsport's a disease with no cure. Once caught, you can't stop. That's unfortunately, that's true for a lot of us, I think, and. For some of us, it would be better for us to get out of it, but we don't, and we will be there for however long it takes.
Paul was reflecting in the comments. That's a reply to one of my comments. If he does the event through till 2035, he will have attended 49 Australian Grands Prix, with the exception of the first one in 1985. And of course, we didn't have one in 2021. So by 2035, we will have had 50 Australian Grands Prix.
Yeah, well, there you go, and that's just in Melbourne. That's
FIA Formula One.
FIA Formula One.
Australian Grands Prix.
This is very true. But it's going to be interesting. It's very much a transitional years here. I was interested. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, ran at the event. I was interested in Shane's comments with To Speed Cafe. I was surprised in a way. I mean, he was really stunned at just how big the event was. I mean, he said he was really surprised, which surprised me. I mean, because he's had enough, international experience to sort of understand. But yeah, I think that once you do go to Le Mans and you do see it, I got in trouble. I've told this story before on sort of SEN radio when somebody dared to say, it's a bit like sort of the French version of Bathurst, is it? Yeah, after 48 hours of no sleep, none. Yeah, you don't the scope of it is so much bigger, so much grander. I mean, even compared with the Grand Prix, we know how big the Grand Prix is, but it's Le Mans is several sections above in terms of the professionalism. In terms
for a week.
And it is if you're going over particularly for the 100th anniversary, but at any stage, if you're going over and you think you're only going to go once, and you won't go once, because I always thought, well, this is it. I'll go once and I can tick it off the bucket list and I'll never go again. No, I went back a number of times, and if I've got any chance at all before I shuffle off this mortal coil of getting back, I will be going. But. Yeah, go for the week. Go there, go to the test day, because they run the test day on the Sunday before the race now, which they didn't used to. It used to be 2 weeks out, but now you can go to the test day, get your tickets. Your tickets for the race get you into the test day as well. You can see the test day, then you go into on Monday and Tuesday. You can go into the town and watch. They have scrutineering in the middle of the town, and they'll get 40, 50,000 literally watching scrutineering. They've got stages and they tell you what they're doing. It's out the front of at the Plus de Republic, out the front of the cathedral there. That's there. And then you hit the track on Wednesday, and from Wednesday through until the end of the race, it is non-stop action. It's an amazing event. Just terrific.
So on the note of Shane Van Gisbergen, this of course was his first ever time in a GTE car. He was lined up to do the event in an LMP2 car a couple of years ago before obviously COVID put pay to that. There was a stage where the front running cars in GTE Pro were just dropping like flies. One Corvette out with mechanical damage, with mechanical failure, and the other leading Corvette basically being taken out by an errant, side-to-side contact from an LMP2 car. There was, the massive blowout and bodywork failure for one of the leading Porsche GT team cars. And then in all of this, the Honeybee storage, Riley Motorsport.
Yeah, the Riley Motorsport.
Ferrari just sitting there, like a drum, just banging away. But it just goes to show the difference in level between having a privateer-run professional car and a factory-run professional car. And I think that probably speaks a little bit to the you could look at the difference in performance across those, the 5 cars that finished and look at it and go, okay, that's the reason why, the ACO is wanting to move away from factory teams, is that, for the whole spectacle, they want it to be better. I am gutted that Corvette recorded a double DNF in their final year as an all-pro outfit. The legacy of that brand and that team, that group of people in the event is staggering. But then, to look at the LMP2 field, like it was a constant battle at the front, multiple cars on the lead lap within sight of each other, and kudos to Robert Kubica in the Orlan car. He was keeping them on their toes. But LMP2 was almost over for several cars at the first corner.
Yeah, they talk about the red mist descending. I mean, guys, it's a 24-hour race. You don't have to lead on the first corner. Yeah, no, we'll keep out of trouble. So, flag goes. I'm coming. Yeah, they're straight through and cars going everywhere. It was it's crazy, but you'd have to think. Surely you'd have to think with all of the new LMP. Or the new hypercars and the GTP LMDH cars that are coming through, you would have to think that one of those factories would be putting up their hand at some stage to Robert Kubica and saying, "Do you want to drive?" Because he was in those early stages, he was flying.
Yeah, well, a number of organisations are using the LMP2 category as a reference point for what prototype racing in 2023 is going to be like. We've seen that Ferrari is moving its is going with, I believe it's Oreca is helping them to build their new GT3 cars going forward. They're moving away from Michelotto, and then we saw AF Corsa, who of course a long-time Ferrari customer team, turned up running an Oreca chassis, an LMP2. We've, of course, seen the Penske Corporation, who, of course, will be running a Multimatic chassied Porsche LMDH or Porsche GTPP next year. They were running an Oreca chassis. Indeed, I think it might even be the same Oreca chassis that they used to learn what prototype racing was like under ACO rules, again, before they debuted the Oreca chassied Acura in the United States in DPI. So it's always interesting to see who's learning, a new type of racing in the customer racing or the spec class before the factories turn up. And if we cast our minds back 12 months ago, it was the WRT team out of Belgium, who's renowned for being an Audi sports car in GT3 level racing. Professional outfit. They turned up and were in position to win, first and second in 2021 until that last lap electronic failure.
Yeah, I mean, and very disappointing for them. I mean, they came across to LMP2 racing and it was just basically assumed that they were going to walk in and get that Audi prototype team,
which is now evaporated.
Yeah, it's gone now. That's it. It's out of the window. It's out of the window now. I'm still worried a bit about Alpine. They're going back to LMP2 themselves next year. They're going
makes
to.
Sense, though.
It's interesting, but I mean, I was surprised, like for the 100th anniversary, that they didn't move heaven and earth to have a car there. Now, of course, coming up at the next round at Monza, we will see the debut of the Peugeot, and Peugeot were in force at Le Mans. They were in the museum there with a display of a lot of their older cars, and they're ready to go. And you can tell that they are very serious. They will be there.
And they're very French.
They're very French, yes. And I imagine that will, when it comes into the balance of performance, I imagine that will go down very well with the ACO. But at the same time, you'll have next year probably 2 Toyotas. They did say that at some stage 3 might even be a possibility, but you'll have 2 Toyotas, you'll have a couple of Peugeots, hopefully a couple of Glickenhaus, at least 2 Porsches. Penske have said they're not going to bring, for the first year at least, they're not going to bring their IMSA Porsches to Le Mans. They will just run their World Endurance Championship cars, but still that's another two Porsches running as well. And we should have Ferrari as well. So that's 5 manufacturers running around with 1 or 2 cars. So we're going to go from 5 top-level cars through to possibly as many as a dozen for next year as well. And then the year after, you add Alpine to that, and possibly BMW, and possibly Acura, Honda as well. Lamborghini.
Cadillac.
Boy, it's... oh, that's right. Well, Cadillac will be there.
The Cadillac car was unveiled during the week, and doesn't that look like a magnificent piece of equipment?
That looks that looks very. It's interesting that there's a lot of visual stylings there that remind me a lot of the Ford GT. I think that there's some hangover from there. I think that if Ford had have made the GT version of the LMP version of the Ford GT, I think that it would have looked at least from the sides and at the top, it would have looked very similar to that car that we saw from Cadillac. But it's a great looking car, and as John Hindhaugh kept saying, in terms of within the rules that they've got for the LMDH category, what will a stylist at Lamborghini do? What could that thing look like?
I got doors that go like this.
Yes. Paul is asking the question. Chris, what is what's your background photo?
It's the 1956 Albert Park Grand Prix.
I thought it was Albert Park. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, would my grandfather be in that shot somewhere?
He would be.
Yeah.
I am pretty sure he probably would be. Yes. He would be
driving a Maserati.
Maserati. Yep. Yeah. 300S.
Get out of the way, Chris. I'm joking.
There certainly, Sterling Moss should have been there as well, but yeah, I mean Bibb would have been there as well, no doubt.
What you can do, Chris, is you've got the shot. What you could do is you can send it on to our page, and so he can look.
Yeah, okay.
Blow up himself. There you go.
So,
it was almost a Maserati spec race that year. Sterling Moss, Maserati 250F. Jean Berard,
250.
Maserati 250F. Peter Whitehead, Ferrari 555. Reg Hunt, Maserati 250. Stan Jones, Maserati 250. Reg Parnell, Ferrari 555. Lex Davison, Ferrari 625. Doug Whiteford, Talbot. Len Lukey of Lukey Mufflers. Cooper T23. And the DNFs, I think my grandfather might have been 1955.
55. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I thought he would have been there, but anyway, that's there. But yeah, he certainly made up for it afterwards. He was in plenty of Australian Grand Prix afterwards, and plenty of races and plenty of gold stars, of course, which he won a few.
Speaking of gold stars, Hidden Valley this weekend as well too.
Yeah, let's get on to that. Going to be a huge weekend up at Hidden Valley. Now, the good news once again is I mentioned last week that there was a lot of the Winter Nationals were a part of KO's freebies. This weekend, the Triple Threat up at Hidden Valley is also a part of KO's freebies as well. So if you don't have a subscription to KO, you can still watch everything up until the Sunday. So that will include all of the supercar stuff on Friday, Saturday, and then the drag racing as well. And the drag racing, the Top Fuel, will also be seen live on 7 Plus as well on Friday and Saturday night. So yeah, you get so once again, a huge amount of motorsport happening this weekend.
And it's going to be the supercars are going to be free to air on Channel 7.
Yeah, so that's,
7. Okay.
Yeah, so you'll be able to watch it, and it is
channel, because they usually put the horse racing on 7, so it'll be on Mate or 2.
It'll be on one of the channels of 7 then.
It'll be A7. You know, whichever one is out there, you look around and
check
you
your
will find
little
it.
TV guides.
Check your local guides for details. Yes, also as Paul's pointing out, the super bikes are up there as well, and of course it's Indigenous round as well. And by gee, there's some good looking liveries, some really interesting liveries. Chris
some
Pithers,
deadly ones, you might say.
very very deadly, and a lot of them. The Chris Pithers car. There's a football connection there. I mean, Doc watching the football because that's been done by a young Rioli. So so she has done the livery for the Coke car, and it looks really, really good. Most of them look pretty good, but the Coke car I think looks fantastic. So that'll be, and you can imagine the model makers, will be rubbing their hands together with glee, because it'll be a bit like the crocodile car at the race of 1,000 years, the Adelaide Le Mans, the American Le Mans round in Adelaide all those years ago. The crocodile car for Audi is a real collector's item now, and I am now kicking myself the fact that when we were in France for Le Mans at that time, we went to a local supermarket, and they were at Auchan, and they were on sale there for about €25, and we just didn't have €25 at the time. We thought we'll definitely get one, and a couple of years later they were asking $300 or $400 for them. So.
Question, Chris, I think that photo, if it's not of the Grand Prix, it might be of the Australian Tourist Trophy race, which I think I'm reading here might have been a week or two beforehand. And in that, my grandfather would have been driving a D-Type.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're all sports cars there. So so it would be the TT. Yeah. So, but either way, it's part of the very long history of racing at Albert Park. It's not a truly modern thing. And I remember going, if you remember, and I don't know if Dave, if you were old enough, but
mid '90s, the revival.
Yeah, the revival, which they
went the correct way around. They went counterclockwise, and they had the vintage correct barriers delineating the demonstrations for the public. Hay bales.
Yes, and they also and you would remember that your grandfather drove a Formula 5000.
Yeah, of course, this was either just before or just after his big accident at the Geelong Speed Trials.
That's right. Yeah,
Brabham BT31A.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he was in a Lola T332, I think it was, running a green and gold in the traditional green and gold colours. So so that was really I suppose in a way the start of the process to get racing back at Albert Park. So it certainly turned into something really good. Okay, a bit of MotoGP news happening, Doc. What's going on? First of all, how did your blue baggers go? Is it all over? Is the suffering finished?
Yeah, I can feel a blackout coming on. I'm losing power here, guys. I haven't caught up with the MotoGP, strange enough. I've had a crazy week. I've had a fair bit on this week with work and other things, and I got Dennis knocked me out yesterday with a couple of fillings and that sort of stuff. So I've had a bit of a rough week this week. So it's so I haven't been across it all at the moment. But yeah, it's there's always something happening. But I noticed down the bottom there that you actually said Rins has got a bench wrist at the moment.
Yeah, broken wrist. Says he's going to ride on. Alex Rins is saying he's going to ride on regardless. But he'll sort that out when they race. They're racing this week at the I think it's the Nürburgring, isn't it, for the German MotoGP? And he said that he's going to race. Jack Miller hoping to recover, as he said in the bottom by his own description. He said he had a shithouse race in the last round, and he's hoping to do better at this weekend's German Grand Prix. So that will be on once again. If on KO, it's interesting. I mean, you can get a whole bunch of stuff for free on KO. It's amazing how much stuff is there, because you will get all the practice sessions and qualifying for the MotoGP. You just don't get the race without paying for it. But if you're happy to just sort of catch up later, but you want to watch some MotoGP over the course of the weekend, that is available free of charge on KO as well, if you don't want to shell out the $25. And I'm not doing that until the Test series against Sri Lanka starts. So we've got there Jack McGuigan pointing out that his father was there as well, and the late Ian Cook. Yes, Ian of course lost his life at Sandown many years ago. So yeah, some famous names there running around at Albert Park in the 1950s and running around. I know that Sterling Moss, when we spoke to Sterling Moss years ago, he had very good memories of Albert Park in those days. There you go. Yeah, Paul saying he's got a day two Melbourne. 1958 Melbourne Grand Prix program in which Bibb was entered to run the Maserati 250F. So that was 50. That was 58. So a couple of years after. Yeah, a couple of years later after the what they call the Olympic Grand Prix in '56, of course. Anyway, I think that just about does us, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I think that's us for this week. Now we'll probably pop up next week at some stage very soon. We're going to have to have a Thursday night or something off, because we're going to have the In Pit Lane rap party at some stage. So yes, as Box is pointing out, the Canadian Grand Prix, 4 o'clock on 4 a.m. on Monday.
Can we have another public holiday on Monday so I can stay up and watch some motor racing?
It was very handy. I mean, it was very lovely of Her Majesty to have a fake birthday on the weekend after Le Mans.
Some of us work Sunday, some of us work Monday.
Maybe she likes to watch the motor racing too.
I'm sure she does.
So we only got a few hours of Le Mans just in the afternoons before some of us have got to keep this world ticking over and feed the masses.
And we appreciate it. We really do. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. Stay, if you haven't done so yet, go to the In Pit Lane YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Really important. The algorithms, the more people who click like, the more people who subscribe, the more that YouTube promote your category and promote your channel. So we really do appreciate it if you would do that. If you're not following us on Facebook, go over there and do that as well. We'll have all the updates coming up. Hoping to get out at some stage, despite the fact I was so looking forward to a break, and but I must admit, on Monday morning, I really did get up in the morning and go straight to the keyboard and go, I've got to start writing the news oh no I don't, and by about 4 o'clock that afternoon I was going, God, the day's dragged on.
Just out of curiosity, obviously we've got electricity problems here across the state, if not the whole country. Has Getsy's battery gone flat too? Because you haven't been out either.
No, I haven't. Well, this is the thing. I haven't really had a need to go. Well, I have been out. I've been to a lot of doctors and a lot of that. That's one of the reasons I'm staying indoors. The less every time I go out now, somebody sticks something into me or drags something out of me or whatever. So, and normally that would be a good thing, but not at the moment. Okay, we'll see you. We'll see you next week from the If I live that long, we'll see you next week on Full Course Yellow. And remember, In Pit Lane will return to Channel 31 coming up starting at the end of August, early September. We're back in the studio on August the 30th, I believe. Studio's been booked and we're ready to go. So hopefully sometime within that week or the week after, we'll be back on air on Channel 31 right across Melbourne and Geelong. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week. Until then, from all of us, bye for now.
Have a great weekend.